Before we get started with today's show, I'm here to tell you about B-Res Coffee Company, made by gamers for gamers right here on the Gulf Coast in Pensacola, Florida. Do you like light or medium roast? Then try the Necro Medium, Holy Grail Light, or Stamina Boost. Or if you're like me and prefer darker roast, try the Critical Dark or the Coup Slayer Mocha Roast. But what if you can't pick just one? Then try one of their specialty sample packs, perfect for an all-night gaming, or in the case of my fellow filmmakers, an all-night editing session. So forget about all the crappy coffee you've been buying at the grocery store and head on over to brescoffeeco.com. Use the promo code DDE at checkout to get 10% off your order. Have you ever thought to yourself after listening to this podcast, why didn't Derek ask this question? Or why didn't he ask that question? I know I certainly have. Well, you get the chance to do that if you sign up for my Patreon at patreon.com/DDiamondPodcast. You get the chance to ask guests of the show a question. If you're a fan of the top 5 list, you get to vote on what the top 5 topic will be. And we want to thank our patrons Tim Spivey, Donna Diamond, Shannon Williams, and Mike Eveland. Thank you so much for your continued support. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the Derek Diamond Experience podcast, where every week I take a look inside the world of film and television with those who have lived it and experienced it. I am your host, Derek Diamond, and this is the penultimate episode, if you will. After this week, just one episode left in the podcast, and I'll get to the finale details in the outro of this show. But much better news this week is we're finally getting the release of Ghostbusters Afterlife. It's been delayed numerous times due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, but it's finally here. It's actually being released today if you're listening to this the day it comes out. If you're a fan of early releases like I am, I know I'll be going to see it today, and I'll be giving my thoughts on it on next week's show. So I thought for this week, we have to do a good old-fashioned roundtable discussion on the Ghostbusters franchise, and I can't think of a better crew than with Jason Robbins, Wally Phelps, and Mr. Mike Eveland. They joined me on the show this week to discuss our first memories of Ghostbusters, why we think it's called a perfect film. We talk about how Ghostbusters 2 is actually an underrated movie, and to me, a more than worthy sequel to the original. And we also talk about the Real Ghostbusters animated series and our expectations for Ghostbusters Afterlife. So while you're waiting to see the new movie, you can have this. You also have the Ghostbusters watch along that I released to the public earlier this week. So you've got more than enough content for your Ghostbusters fandom. So without further ado, here is the Ghostbusters Roundtable discussion with Jason, Wally, and Mike. Welcome back to the Derek Diamond Experience podcast, and we're finally here the week of Ghostbusters Afterlife finally being released in theaters after what seems like years. I think it has been years, technically, at this point. Yes. At this point, technically, it has been. So we're here to do a good old-fashioned Ghostbusters roundtable discussion on the entire series from the original movie all the way to the 2016 movie, which I actually, as of this recording, watched for the first time today. So
what?
Yeah, right, exactly. But first, let me introduce the fine panelists that will be here joining me. First up, we have my co-host from the Nerd Cave Retro podcast, Mr. Jason Robbins. How are you, sir?
Yes, have some.
Absolutely. Also joining us is the co-writer of the film Monsters Anonymous and the biggest Ghostbusters fan that I know. He is the key master to this discussion, Mr. Wally Phelps. How are you?
I've seen shit that'll turn you white.
It had to be pretty major because I'm already pretty white enough.
but with this lighting, I am white as hell.
Both in skin tone and in just my overall persona. Also joining us is the co-founder of sponsor of this podcast, B-Res Coffee Company, and the host of the Jester's Court, Mr. Mike Eveland. Mike, how are you, my friend?
I'm good.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me for this podcast. I know that, this was a no-brainer to do the week of Ghostbusters Afterlife. We've been waiting for this movie for a long time. So I thought it'd be cool to go back and just take a look at the series as a whole and some of our memories and things that we love about this series overall. So Mike, you're the newbie to this show. So we're going to start with you. What is your first memory of Ghostbusters?
I was in like second grade. And let me just say for the starters, like what we called kids movies in the 80s versus now, because I was an 8-year-old in second grade watching this movie, and it's crazy when you watch it as an adult. But yeah, it was second grade. People showed up to career day, dressed as Ghostbusters, or what are you gonna be when you grow up? Ghostbuster. That was legit a thing.
So what was your initial reaction like when you first heard of the franchise? Like, were you just dying to know more about it? Did you like rush to see the movie? What was it that sparked your interest in it?
I was a child, so I don't think I watched it in theaters. I think my mom rented it for me, and then we made her rent it every weekend for pretty much for a year. We watched that movie every single weekend over and over again. In hindsight, I don't know why we didn't buy the damn tape, but
probably because they were like $100 back then.
What about you, Jason?
I actually saw it in the theater. I think me and you, Mike, we're roughly the same age. I was 7 years old when I saw it in the theater. I remember my dad taking me to see it at Hardy Court Theater in Gulfport, Mississippi. And I don't know if it was opening weekend. I don't even remember like the time leading up to the movie, if I even knew what we were going to see. I just remember seeing the movie in the theater and afterwards just being completely obsessed with being a Ghostbuster. I had to have everything Ghostbuster. I had to have it, whether it was I had these little schematic books you could get that told you, what the proton packs were and the traps and all that stuff, the kind of ghosts that were in the movie. I had to have everything Ghostbusters. Even when the cartoon came out, I had to have all the Ghostbusters stuff. So it was from that moment on, and in theater, that was my first memory of it, was seeing it in theater.
You mentioning Real Ghostbusters, to plug our show, we've done quite a few commentary tracks for the Patreon subscribers with the Real Ghostbusters. I think when we do the episodes where we'll watch like 2 episodes of a show, whether it's an old like live action show or an animated show, Real Ghostbusters seems to be like the one that we always go to, or like, we got to watch an episode of that along with something else, just because it's, it was good quality. Like, to me, not just, I thought the animation was pretty good for the time, but I think just the storytelling in that show was good too.
Well, yeah, I mean, that show was relatively like mature, like you look at some of the storytelling and it wasn't just some, mindless cartoon. Like, it actually had good, scary stories. And Wally, I know you talked about this on the Fantastic People podcast about, it was along the lines of like, are you afraid of the dark and things like that? Like, it was a pretty creepy, scary show.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Wally? What was your first memory of Ghostbusters?
I've never seen it. It was... My first memory of Ghostbusters was being terrified of it, because whenever my parents rented it, I would do this thing where I would sit right there where there was a chair that kind of blocked the TV, and I would sit there and play while I was listening to a movie I was told I can't watch. And that's what I remember, because I'd hear like danger music, that how that music's playing on the rooftop when the terror dogs are breaking out of the gargoyles, and I'm like, well, what's going on over there? Like and eggs cracking. Just me being terrified of the whole thing. And I'd poke my head in every so often. I'd see Slimer and stuff like that, and I'm like, this is insanity. I love it. But it terrified me. I never wanted to watch the whole thing. So until Real Ghostbusters. And that's when I started really knowing what a Ghostbuster was, I guess you would say.
Did you think that, because Ghostbusters is your favorite franchise, right? Of anything?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the greatest movie ever made.
Well, I wanted to bring that up because when we did our Ghostbusters watch along, I've heard you say multiple times that you consider Ghostbusters to be a perfect film.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it's a perfect film?
Because I can watch it. I know exactly what's going to happen in the movie, and I love it as if it was the first time I saw it. In fact, I really wish that I could forget what happened so I could watch it again for the first time. It's perfect in that the characters feel like they're real, lived-in characters. The world seems real and lived in. It's New York City, so of course it is real. The whole idea of these people who just go around and capture ghosts as their job really just captured my imagination. And with our career day, I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to go and dress up like a Ghostbuster until my mom told me that's not a thing. You cannot be a Ghostbuster for career day.
Hogwash.
Right. And at that moment, I'm like, you mean they lied to me? It was a revelation that somebody had to come up with this. These aren't real people that do a real service. Well, what are we going to do about the ghost in my bedroom?
Well, and I think there's something to be said, in going back and watching specifically the original two movies, even though it's about, a fantasy premise, catching ghosts, the way it's done, I think to myself, if this were to happen, in real life or happen during that time frame, I could see this being like a realistic way, if that makes sense, to catch the ghost. Like there's a certain practicality to it that I think adds to it.
Right. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Dan Aykroyd took it very seriously. In fact, I was watching the other day, Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray went on Carson to promote the movie on the weekend that it was about to come out. And Dan Aykroyd actually pulled out a photograph of his great-grandfather who was holding a seance, and there was these heads behind him that he said just appeared in the photograph. And, his great-grandfather would actually evaluate these mediums and spiritual people that would come into town with these shows, and he would either validate that they were real or would label them a hoax and run them out of town. And that's where he came up with the idea of these paranormal investigators from his great-grandfather. So there is an element of something that Dan Aykroyd actually believes in there.
Sounds like they were hitting the Crystal Skull vodka a little too hard. Sounds like to me.
You could say it's in his blood.
Skull you speak of. I don't.
It's the best Indiana Jones movie. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? There's only 3 Indiana Jones movies, and that's not one of them.
Doom came out the weekend before Ghostbusters did.
Temple of Doom.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then Ghostbusters knocked it out of the off of number 1 in the box office,
as it should have.
Yeah.
Nothing against Temple of Doom, but Ghostbusters is a better movie.
No, and it's the weaker of the 3. Not to get off Ghostbusters, but it's the weaker of the 3 Indiana Jones for sure.
Agreed. I totally agree. Mike, what about you? Do you agree that Ghostbusters is a perfect film?
Oh yeah, because the number of times I have rewatched that movie in my lifetime, and I gotta tell you, I watched the original yesterday to prepare for this. Just like Wally said, it wasn't boring. I wasn't like, oh, I know what's happening. No, I watched the thing, and it was great, and it's still great. 35 years later, I'm still watching it, and it's still awesome. You can't do better than that.
I think they should teach that movie in college for editing, because that movie, there is no downtime. in that movie at all. I mean, once you're established in the library, and from the moment that the Ghostbusters are in the library, the movie just takes off, and it just does not let up for an hour and 40 minutes or however long it is.
How perfect is it for the 80s too that the secondary bad guy is the Environmental Protection Agency?
Yeah. We talked about that at length when we did the commentary track. We're like, the guy kind of got a point, and he's just doing his job, but man, he's a dick about it.
Interesting thing about the making of the movie. There's a whole lot of interesting things about the making of the movie, but the real EPA came in when they were filming the Stay Puft scenes, because the suit didn't adhere to the Environmental Protection Agency guidelines, because they were going to set it on fire, and they're like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that, especially in an enclosed area. They did it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's when they went back and rewrote the bad guy as the EPA guy. He was some other bureaucrat before, zoning or something.
Yeah, I also think
commercial area.
I was about to be my question, like why they have an issue with the costume, but they did it anyway, so
yeah, it was made out of the same material that bedding was made out of, the soft not styrofoam, but like it was like a combination of the like bedding and I can't think of what it's called, but like foam rubber, and it was toxic when burnt. So it was it was funny because the guy who played Stay Puft, whenever they did the initial tests, said that they had to use a harder, like they had to use that particular type of foam, because whenever they tried to use like just regular normal foam, it looked like he had a camel toe. So they had to make it to where it would be more rigid, so it wouldn't scrunch down between his thighs like that, because they're trying for a PG rating. In fact, they edited out a whole bunch of stuff anyway, because they were trying to go for that PG rating. The original line, believe it or not, was "fuck off, man, I'm a scientist."
No, I could see that. I could see that.
I did not know that.
I didn't either until the other day. Watched a documentary called "Cleaning Up the Town," and it had a whole lot of really cool stories.
Now that song's going to be stuck in my head for the rest of the podcast, but I'm not complaining.
Right.
Because we were talking about it even, when we were doing the watch along, even the soundtrack goes so well with the movie. Right. Like everybody knows the Ghostbusters theme song, by Ray Parker Jr., but with Saving the Day, Magic, Cleaning Up the Town, I was listening to the soundtrack to prep for the watch along, and I was like, this soundtrack even is just really good, and it fits really well with everything. Like I've tried to pick the movie apart, but I can't really find any flaws with it. Everything from
Magic
editing
plays perfectly like in that scene.
Yes.
Well, I'm a big proponent of music can make or break a movie. Like imagine if the original A New Hope had been scored like a 1970s sci-fi movie. Star Wars would not be the thing it is today.
Or if Halloween didn't have the John Carpenter theme that he wrote.
Exactly. Like you go back and you listen to those, even like the little interstitial songs for Ghostbusters, like when they're just kind of doing stuff and it's like just like those little things, like totally sets the tone. Like it has that comedic tone to it. But then there's also the ones that are like the creepiness. There's a lot of stuff where they use like theremins and things like that. It just completely sets the mood for that movie.
I totally agree. And I also think in addition to editing, the script should be taught as well.
Oh, yeah. If there even was a script, there probably was just like an outline.
I mean, it was in that documentary I was watching, they had the script on the screen sometimes, and it's like almost nothing like what actually ended up in the movie. Because I mean, it'll have like you recognize what scene it is, but like none of the dialogue is the same. None of
I would imagine that script was just like, okay, they describe the action and then it says like Venkman says something.
Just an outline.
Stance says something.
Well, no, it would have it. And in fact, from what I understand, the first draft had Winston having most of the best lines. And then they moved all the lines over to Venkman because they're like, you can't give all the best jokes to the fourth guy. You can't. No. So, and that's how that role got reduced, as everybody knows happens. But it was interesting because nobody was doing what they were supposed to except for the people who were like actual actors, like the guy who played the mayor was like, I would start the scene with why here, why now, which is my line. And then they'll just go off and I will just respond to what they just said. I mean,
that's all you can do.
Right. That's all you can do is try to keep up.
I mean, you're sitting in a room trying to do a scene with freaking Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, and it's like, how do you even keep up with like that level of comedic like genius? Like, how do you even do it? Like, all you can do is just, all right, I'm just gonna react. Like, that's all you can do.
I mean, and that's basically what everybody was doing. They just, would let them go and do what they were doing, and then like there was one story that Annie Potts told where Bill Murray didn't show up at his call time, so he was hours late. So they had to film something. So they just did all of her coverage, and then when he showed up, he was incredibly embarrassed and everything like that. And it's like, look, just do the lines and we'll get it done, because you can't improvise now because you fucked that up. Now you have to do what I did. And they just kept on going, and he kept on like, but this would be funnier. Look, we all want to go home. Just say the lines and we can go home.
I would just love fits. I was gonna say that actually fits, because when you see him with the mayor, Bill Murray, you watch that and you're like, there's no way that's scripted. Where he goes on the tangent, dogs and cats, and so that actually that fits in beautifully, because
he even improvised for everyone else in that scene sometimes, because like the when the Cardinal comes in, and that whole thing, that was all Venkman going, it'd be really funny is if they were on a first name basis, and all this kind of stuff, and he basically rewrote the whole scene there. The only thing that was really scripted whenever they showed the script on screen, whenever they were doing the thing, was Winston's part. The I've seen shit that'll turn you white. That part was scripted, but everything around it was basically them just messing around.
I would just love to have been on set for a day just to watch. It would have been amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It's interesting because they filmed all of those scenes in the actual mayor's office, and they on that day lost the permit that they had to film the scene with all the military escorting Ecto-1 down the street, and because they were going to end up having to close down so many roads that all of New York is going to be having a traffic jam at that point. And Dan and Bill had disappeared, and they're like, well, we'll film the coverage for all these people, blah, 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 that kind of thing. And then whenever they appeared, they're like, okay, we got the permit back. It's like, what? Yeah, we went, the mayor's just over there. We went over there, talked to him. We got it. We're good.
Let me ask you guys this, because we've been talking about, improvised lines and everything. And we'll start with you, Mike. Favorite quote from the original Ghostbusters movie?
Probably a tie between Ray. If someone asks you if you're a god, you would say yes. And then flash to the beginning, Venkman in the hotel, just because the way he delivered the line, not because it's a great line, but when he pulls the sheet out and everything falls but the flowers, and the flowers are still standing. And it's not even that great of a line, but the way he delivers it, I just always love that.
That was a line that I think no one could have done it like Bill Murray did. What about you, Jason?
I think probably, I mean, other than, well, you want some coffee? Do I? Yes, have some. Yes, have some. I mean, that like, I don't know if that was scripted or not, but that's like perfect comedy timing. And, but my favorite line is they're in the elevator and he's like, why worry? Each one of us is wearing an unlicensed nuclear accelerator on his back. And it's all untested. Like this is their field test. Like, yeah, they probably should have done some open testing before, destroying half of a hotel like they did.
Yeah, but that led to one of the best parts of the movie when the guy's like, I'm not paying this, all this damage you did. And you're like, oh, we'll just go put it back. Is that what you want? We'll go ahead, just drop it back in there.
Oh, we sure
and
can, Dr. Venkman.
And one of the funniest parts of the movie is when, they they're walking down the hallway, they freak out and they start blasting the poor maid's cart. And she's like,
what are you doing?
What the hell are you doing?
Y'all know the story behind that, don't you?
You told us during the commentary, like that was her actual real reaction.
Yeah, because they didn't tell her that the cart was going to blow up like that.
Authenticity. It was worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What about you, Wally?
Oh, my favorite line is probably, I think he can hear you, Ray. I don't know why. But
I thought it would have been,
laugh I ever get.
You smell something?
No human would stack books like this.
There's so many good lines. I mean, how many lines? I mean, I could literally quote that entire movie from beginning to end. Like, somebody blows their nose and you want to keep it. Like, all those lines are just perfect.
Right. I love that exchange where Dana's like, are you even using that thing right? It's like, yes, of course. I think so. I am.
Said the psychologist.
Right. You're more like a game show host.
And and we talked about it during the commentary. I often wonder how much money does a New York symphony cellist make, because she lived in
not that much money.
Pretty badass apartment for to be right on the corner apartment overlooking with Central Park. Like that can't be cheap.
She's the best cellist in the history of cellists.
I think it was probably
she's the Eddie Van Halen of cellists.
You should hear her play Jump.
Her playing Hot for Teacher will blow your mind.
Right.
As cliche as it might be, mine is mostly because of the delivery. When they catch Slimer and they just barge out of the room and Bill Murray goes, "We came, we saw, we kicked its ass."
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah. It's just that, again, like Bill Murray would be the only one to me that could deliver it.
Even though a lot of my memories of the movie, like I didn't get that line, "We came, we saw, we kicked its ass," because I taped it off of the ABC Sunday night movie when it was world premiere on ABC. So I taped it on the VCR. Like I even sat next to the VCR and paused it for all the commercials. But then again, like they overdubbed all the what little cursing there is in the movie.
I was gonna say that you probably lost a lot of content too, just for time. And I doubt they showed the ghost giving a blowjob to Ray.
I still have it on VHS somewhere. I'm gonna have to dig it out and watch it to see how much was actually cut out of the movie.
Think they cut the I think they did cut out the ghost job. They didn't cut it out. They changed Dickless to Willie Wick. That makes sense. Willie Wick here. Yeah, and I don't even remember what. But then what did they do with
Murray's response? He's like, "Is this true?" He's like, "Yes, he has no dick."
Right.
He has no Willy Wick.
That's what I heard. But it's
And overdubbing in the 80s was awful too, because they would always get somebody that like their voice doesn't even match whatsoever.
Right.
So it's like, we came, we saw, we kicked it, or like,
Or it's a woman.
like, but
Yeah.
like, 'cause a completely different voice, and you're like, oh, what just happened?
It's kind of off topic, but I remember watching a dubbed version of Smokey and the Bandit on TV once, and the guy doing the dub for Jackie Gleason sounded like someone doing a terrible Jackie Gleason impression.
Right. It was so I remember that because
it was bad.
You some bitch was changed to something else.
You scumbum.
You scumbum. That's right. Yep. And he sounded so bad.
I know that well because I cannot tell you how many times I watched Smokey and the Bandit on TBS when I was a kid.
Man, TBS before FX, TBS was the one ruining all the great movies. Sometimes they would play stuff you're like,
but they played good stuff all day long. Like they always put great movies on, even though they, ruined the overdubs. And then they had like always playing like Gilligan's Island and like cool TV shows.
TBS but they would do movies like Body Heat or something. Like, why bother? Like, what is it? Like 35 minutes long after you cut it for that?
That should be a segment for my new show, The Worst Overdubs in the History of Movies.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
I think that's a great idea. I might do that for one of the first episodes. But let's move on to Ghostbusters 2, which I believe came out in 1989. And I watched that movie over the weekend for the first time since I was in college. And this might be just I don't want to call it a jaded view, but I never hear as much about Ghostbusters 2 as the original. I think it's because the original is so iconic, and it's one of those movies that I think is so important in the history of films in general, that the sequel kind of gets lost by the wayside. But I like the sequel. Like, it's not as good as Ghostbusters 1, but to me, it's a solid sequel.
Well, I also feel bad for Ghostbusters 2 because it came out and was direct competition with Tim Burton's Batman. And I remember distinctly, my dad taking me opening weekend to see Batman. And we went to, Wally, you may remember this theater. It was the 2 cinema. It had 2 theaters.
The Surfside?
No, it was outside of the mall.
The mall. Yeah.
Because they had 2 inside and then they had a separate. Yeah. And then they had a separate building outside. So they had 2 theaters inside the mall and 2 theaters outside the mall in a separate building. They had Batman and Ghostbusters 2 playing in that outside theater. And there was a line. I mean, we got there early to see one of the first showings. So we were maybe 100 people deep. We had to wait till like the second showing to see it. But the line after us stretched all the way across the mall. I mean, there must have been easily 1,000 people in line to see Batman. Easy. And the next theater was Ghostbusters 2, and not a single soul was going into that theater. I mean, the only reason people were going into that theater is because they knew they weren't going to get in to see Batman, and so they just got tickets to see Ghostbusters 2 and went to see it. So that was Batman was its direct competition, and it just got murdered.
Yeah, you got to think whose genius idea was that? Like, wait till the next weekend, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, but 1989 was a stacked year for movies, though, because you didn't only have Batman. You had Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah.
You had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You had I think Romancing the Stone. You had 1989. That was also the summer that UHF came out.
Was that all really the same year?
Yes, in the same summer. Because I remember because that summer I saw a movie every weekend. And
I don't think it was Romancing the Stone. I think it was the sequel, Jewel of the Nile.
Jewel of the Nile. Okay, so Jewel of the Nile. And Lethal Weapon came out that year.
And didn't Dirty Dancing come out in 89, or was that 88?
That was 88.
Okay.
Yeah, 88 was
but
87. I'm sorry.
But from my own memory, I mean, Batman just literally eclipsed. I mean,
Oh, and Dick Tracy. I forgot about
yes,
that.
I forgot about Dick Tracy. But dude,
Lots of us try to forget about that.
Batman eclipsed everything that summer. It was Batman all day, all night, everywhere.
Right. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing the Bat logo. Mm-hmm. But I mean, for me,
and honestly, I didn't even see Ghostbusters 2 until it came out on video later that year.
I saw it in the theater. In fact, I saw it twice in the theater, but I think that's because it was me. Because I wanted to go see it. Hey, what do you want to go see? I want to go see not Batman. I want to go see Ghostbusters.
But I begged all of my family members that I could to take me to see Batman. I saw it like 4 times in the theater because my dad took me. Then I made my brother take me, and then I think my uncle took me. I was like, every weekend I was just like, somebody's going to take me to this damn movie.
When you get people who don't want to watch the game with you, I'm like, cool, I got other people I can call.
Yeah,
right. My uncle told my parents that Batman would scare me, so I didn't see it until it was on the video. And then when I saw the movie, I'm like, that was bullshit. I mean, I was.
But I mean, as far as Ghostbusters 2 goes, it's definitely not as good as the original. I mean, it's got sequelitis. Yeah, but what is?
That's a tall order to.
But you basically
Empire Strikes Back.
You can't ever do better.
Yeah,
but it's a ultimately watchable good time of a movie. I don't see why there's such hate for that movie. It's got some of the best Winston lines in it. I mean, missed it like that. Yeah. That line is great.
And what's the actor's name that plays the squirrely dude? The assistant.
Rick Moranis?
Yeah. No. I know Rick Moranis' name.
Oh, you mean Janos?
Yes.
Peter McNichol.
He is amazing in that movie.
Yes. I'm covered in the goo.
Do I like the buzzing supplies to him?
I mean, who doesn't always just go, it's Vigo every time they see something with him in it?
Right. Poor guy.
But the thing I noticed about the sequel is that it didn't try to retread or rehash really the plot from the first movie. Like, to me, it stands on its own as being different enough to where it's not a copy of the same thing.
Right.
Is it as good? No, but it's like asking something to be better than, like a Star Wars movie to be better than The Empire Strikes Back. Chances are it's not going to happen.
It kind of, and I know this is a weird comparison, but follow me here. I think a lot of people had problems with it because it's sort of like The Force Awakens when, like Han Solo has lost him and Leia have broken up, and like the Millennium Falcon is just like in some junkyard somewhere, and they're like, man, like all these great characters, just like crap has happened over the last 30 years. Well, you look at Ghostbusters 2 and like the end of Ghostbusters 1, they're citywide heroes. I mean, world heroes at this point. Then you open up Ghostbusters 2 and they're like pretty much on the verge of bankruptcy. Nobody gives a shit about them anymore. They're like doing kids parties and the kids don't even care anymore. It's kind of like, man, these guys were our heroes. And like the movie starts off with like, nobody gives a crap.
But as an adult, I love that aspect of it because that's reality.
Yeah, that's the truth.
They fixed the problem in the first one and all the spirit levels went back to normal. Then they're back to when they first opened the business and like nothing was going on. And they had, Janine, any calls? No.
Yeah.
Right.
That actually fits perfectly.
I remember thinking in the opening when you see them dancing at the kids' parties and they're singing the Ghostbusters theme song. I thought that was a cool little like meta moment. Like it was I thought it was cool personally. But I enjoy the movie.
Wonder.
Oh, yeah,
so I wonder if in the actual Ghostbusters universe, if Ray Parker Jr. still got sued by Huey Lewis for that song.
Huey Lewis doesn't exist in Ghostbusters.
No, he only exists in the Back to the Future universe.
That's right.
It's just too darn loud.
That makes me laugh every time. I remember the first time I saw.
I love the fact that, and it just popped in my head, but the fact that Lewis, at the end of the movie, when he's trying to get there to help them, like, it's just funny because he's like got to take the bus, and like the bus door opens and it's Slimer driving, and he's like, oh, okay, and he just gets on the bus like nothing happens. Like it's great. Like I love that movie.
We haven't talked about Rick Moranis enough. He is hilarious in this.
He makes everything better.
These movies.
Yeah.
And
Just him being in something makes it better.
If you see him, like they have interviews of him from the time that Ghostbusters was filmed on that documentary I watched, and it's so crazy to me just watching him talk normally like a person.
He always puts on that Rick Moranis voice,
right? Because like in real life, he's like, hi, how's it going? I'm Rick Moranis, and then the movie is like, oh, I'm sorry, Dana, I'm gonna, just, and it's like, oh my god, he's like Morty from Rick and Morty.
Or just him getting locked out of his apartment in the first movie. Hey, open up.
I love that that's like a little subtle ongoing gag.
Yeah.
Right.
He's the key master, yet his door is always locked.
Yeah. So kind of backtracking to the first movie, we noticed this when we were doing the watch along, how he was having the party in his apartment and he's out talking with Dana, and you see this old man in the background just dancing to his heart's content. And I'm like, I want to know more about this guy's story.
Yeah.
Like he's just back there, he's doing the shimmy, just living his best life.
And I love how he's so socially awkward, like even in the party when he's talking to everybody and he's like, yeah, I got this off, for this percentage off or whatever. And he's like, yeah, and I used this party as a business expense, and that's why I only invited clients, not friends.
I miss Rick Moranis being in movies.
I do.
I mentioned it earlier, but when he's in something, to me, he automatically makes it better.
Oh,
he's good in everything that I've seen him in.
Yeah, and I get the reasons, and it's tragic, and it's amazing that he stepped back to take care of his kids because he had enough money, he didn't have to. I'm kind of glad now that his kids are older, you're starting to see him again because he, from our childhood, Ghostbusters and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and he was amazing.
Little Shop of Horrors,
oh god,
Spaceballs.
Just go back and look at Spaceballs. Like that is a tour de force comedic performance by him.
I hate it when my Schwartz gets tangled.
I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate. What does that make us? Absolutely nothing.
He did it.
Oh man, that movie's so good. I want to do a watch along for that too one day. So, Real Ghostbusters, the animated series. Now, I did not watch this as a kid because I don't remember it being on when I was a kid. It probably was.
You were a little too young when it was on.
Yeah.
Like
what year did it run? What year did it premiere?
86. Yeah.
Okay, that was the year I was born. So
that was a must watch. That was a must watch every Saturday morning show for me.
Yeah.
So how they got Egon's hair from Harold Ramis
Eclair
to that blonde Eclair looking thing? I don't understand.
Well, they wanted everybody to look just off model, so they didn't have to pay for likeness rights.
Yeah.
And that's also why most of the characters didn't sound anything like the actual actor. The big difference was Maurice LaMarche doing his best Harold Ramis impression, and which is why Bill Murray got the original Peter Venkman fired Lorenzo Music because he didn't think he sounded enough like him, so they replaced him with Dave Coulier, Full House thing.
I love that cartoon so much. Just the toy line alone. I was very tempted. A couple of months ago, I went to the Mobile flea market, and they had the Firehouse, the original Firehouse.
Oh yes,
with the Ecto $1, and I didn't even ask the lady how much she wanted for it because no matter what she would have said, I would have bought it. So I didn't even ask.
$575.
Like sold. because that was something I always wanted as a kid, was that firehouse, man. I remember those commercials where you could dump slime on everything. You remember that slime?
Because they had the grating. Yeah, it came with a little thing of slime, and
it smelled like chemicals and was probably
I can smell it now. Oh
Yeah.
my God. You know what? I've never liked it. I've never enjoyed playing with slime. My brother did. Because
once you got that into the joints of your toys, it was never coming out.
Oh no,
it was done.
It would dry up.
It was done, yeah.
You had to crack it out of the articulation.
But yeah, I had some of the figures, and they were so cool because they looked exactly like the cartoons. And then you got little ghosts and demons with them, and like everything just looked so. I even remember the toy proton pack that was from the cartoon.
Yeah,
I wanted one so bad when I was a kid, and never.
I feel like I was rich because I had all of this. I mean,
you had the proton pack with a little foam laser that comes out.
Yeah, they had the little. It's like a pool noodle. Yeah. And it was great, and I had the trap that actually worked. You stepped on the little.
Yeah, I had that
little plunger, and it opened. And I was always like, even as a kid, I'm like, I wonder if I could paint this black, make it look like the one in the movie.
And I distinctly remember bringing my action figures to school, and we would play with the Ghostbusters toys at recess and stuff, and like that was just good memories for me as a kid. Like that cartoon was, like I said, it was such a well-written cartoon. I mean, yeah, there are some stinkers in there, but for the most part, it's a really good show. I mean, and it still holds up to watch. I mean, you guys know we watch them for commentary tracks all the time, and they hold up. They really do.
I mean, I've got them here somewhere, and I watch them occasionally. I mean, I'll pop out a random disc, and just pop it in and watch them.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
I make my kids watch that kind of stuff, like the Ghostbuster cartoon and Voltron, the original. Like I make my kids watch it because, like, I like this when I was a kid. You're gonna like it.
Yeah.
And then I get mad at them if they don't. Like our oldest, when I first met my wife, her son, my oldest, my stepson, I tried to make him watch Willow when he was 11. I'm like, you're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. Oh my God, I saw this when I was your age, and it blew my mind. Little fucker left like halfway through it. I'm like, I hate you now. That's Willow.
I don't remember.
My little girl loves Ghostbusters.
I remember. So in 1986, I would have been roughly 9 years old. And I don't remember exactly when the episode for the Boogeyman episode came out, but man, that episode messed me up for a while. Like even still as an adult.
August.
I still think about that episode, and just like how creepy that episode was.
We're not the same age. You're 3 years older than me, old guy.
You're getting there. You'll catch up.
And it's funny you mentioned the commentary tracks, because I had never watched the show until we started doing those, and then in doing more research and seeing like how popular that show was. Like I feel like if you put in popularity the original Ghostbusters at number one, I think Real Ghostbusters, the animated series, is a strong number two. Like there's a huge following for that show. It blew my mind. But it's really cool because I've seen, like the toy line, like I've seen photos, like YouTube videos of people, showing off their collections and everything.
I almost bought some of the animation cells at Wizard World a few years ago, but I didn't get them, and I don't remember why I didn't get them, but I wish I would.
Because I would steal them from you?
Probably.
October 18th, 1986 was the air date of The Boogeyman Cometh.
Yeah, so I was 9 years old when that episode aired, and
I was 6.
I was 4.
I was 2 months.
No, I was 5. I'm sorry, I was 5.
You said October 18th?
Yeah, October 18th, 1986.
I would have been exactly 2 months old.
I will turn 6 in 2 weeks.
How many years did that cartoon go? Because I know that
it had to go for a few years, because I know I wasn't watching it when that aired.
I know
it-
cartoons
I
are
must have watched
weird.
it when I was older, more closer to like 88, 89. So it had to run for at least a few years.
Yeah, they didn't really have regular seasons like a normal show did.
Because we've looked at it on Prime, and it just has a long list of episodes.
Yeah,
It's
they
almost
don't
not even
have one.
organized by season, essentially.
Yeah.
7 seasons.
Oh, wow.
And
So it went on-
that's
that's
including Slimer in the Real Ghostbusters.
Okay.
That's a great run for a cartoon.
Oh yeah.
That's from that era. Because I remember some, Nickelodeon shows from the 90s that only got, like Rocko's Modern Life only ran for, I think, 2 or 3 seasons. And it was one of the most popular shows on that network.
It was canceled in 1992.
Wow. So I was in high school when it
I was
was
gonna say that's
finally
amazing
canceled.
considering your target audience would have grown up out of cartoons while
Yeah.
it was running.
Yeah.
Well,
And even-
the interesting thing is only 4 years later, Extreme Ghostbusters came out.
I don't remember that.
The what Ghostbusters?
Extreme Ghostbusters. You don't remember the Extreme Ghostbusters?
I'm vaguely remembering it.
And good night, Wally.
I don't have to take this anymore. I'm going home.
I feel like I'm the only one qualified. No, I'm
But you
kidding.
got to remember, like around 1996 is when I went to college, so I wasn't paying attention to too much pop culture things at that time. Like I don't remember much from pop culture between like 96 and 98.
Oh,
99.
big man went to college, so he couldn't watch a cartoon.
I was
Well, I mean,
already writing screenplays at
plus-
that point.
Plus, I was playing music too, so like my life was just like going to school and playing music. Like that
I didn't
was
watch it either, and that's because that was my high school years, and that was what I call the dark ages, because that was when I decided I wanted to pretend like I wasn't geeky. So,
And I was working at the
I
movie
stopped
theater.
playing
There was
video
no
games
pretending
for a
for
few
me.
years. I wasn't watching like this kind of stuff, and then
I was working
get
at the
out of high
movie
school, and I'm like,
theater
screw
at that
those guys.
time. And
I'm
like that's all I did was watch. As far as pop culture goes, I knew what was going on in the movies because that's all I did was watch movies.
Right.
But as far as
Well,
TV and
Extreme
stuff,
Ghostbusters was a decent show. I didn't really watch it all that much because that's also the era of Animaniacs and Batman the Animated Series and all of those great classic shows that were in the 90s. But it was what I have seen of it was good. I just, like y'all, I had moved on to other stuff at that point. I was already writing already. I was, I think the very first, no, I did my very first movie review was a few years before that for Toy Story. So it was out at a time where I was still very invested in pop culture, but at the same time, I wasn't specifically looking at Ghostbuster material. In fact, it was a time where I hated Ghostbusters. And it was because,
I can't
and it was
picture
because
that.
my little brother watched it literally every day, multiple times a day. And as an older brother, I'm like, screw this thing you like. But as time wore on, it's like I can't be mad at you.
well, Ghostbusters really came back on my radar. When they released the DVD. I don't remember exactly when it was released, but it had all the extra stuff on it, and it had the commentary tracks, which I got huge in the commentary tracks from directors and stuff.
Commentary tracks with DVDs were big.
Yeah, but for that one, they did an MST3K style commentary with Harold Ramis, and it was great. I watched it just the commentary track multiple times.
That's the first DVD I bought, and it was before I bought a DVD player.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the PlayStation to come out, the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
Best DVD player of all time.
Right? It was the best DVD player of the time.
Yeah.
And we've all heard the rumors this is going to be the greatest DVD player to be released. And I'm like, well, I'll just wait until it comes out. And oh my God, I didn't get one until months after it was released for the very same reason that people are having problems getting a 5 now.
Yeah.
It's like I remember getting a phone, like here I am with this copy of Ghostbusters that I just basically look at. And I get a phone call from the electronics section because my mom worked at the Walmart nearby. And the guy who worked electronics was a friend of hers, and he called our house. This is before I had a cell phone. Hey, if you get up here, we got PlayStation 2s. I'm like, hot damn. And I drove over to the Walmart, walked in, and I saw somebody walking out with one. And I'm like, yes, they do have them. And I went back there and I said, where are the PlayStation 2s? And the guy said, oh, we just sold the last one. And I'm like, open up that Dreamcast cabinet. And I bought myself a Dreamcast.
I have a similar story where I bought myself a bunch of DVDs. Ghostbusters was one of them. Top Gun, like, because I was sure I was getting a DVD player for Christmas,
right?
And I had my stash sitting here. I was like, I'm gonna get a DVD player and we're gonna watch these. And then I remember being so mad because I don't remember what they got me, but it wasn't a DVD player. Oh, it was a GameCube. It was a GameCube, and I'm like, oh. Thanks. That'll totally make these DVDs useful.
Right? Well, we need to just stare at them.
And meanwhile, you're over there shaving down the sides of your
just
your DVD.
What part of the movie will I lose if I do this?
I think one of the reasons why I bought Ghostbusters is because it was one of the cheaper DVDs also, because back then DVDs were expensive. Like they had I think at the time they had Ghostbusters, Blade, The Matrix, and they were like $40 to $50. And the bad thing is most of them were empty because people were this is before they would have the plastic containers that you had to open.
When they had those piece of shit like paper covers with the awful plastic backs. Oh, I hated those so much. I still have some of those.
Oh, I do too. But Ghostbusters was in a normal plastic ass box, and they when I was working at the video store, because I worked at a video store in the late 90s, early 2000s, and whenever they announced DVD, I remember reading it in the little magazine that the video store owner got. They're like, here's a display, here's what they look like. And they came in two different types of boxes at that time. Three. The normal CD size jewel cases, the cardboard ones that we're talking about, and the plastic ones that became the standard. And I remember looking at it and seeing that like Jumanji was $75. And I'm like, well, no one's going to buy that.
$75.
Yeah, $75 for Jumanji. And
I don't think they ever actually manufactured Matrix DVDs. I think they just literally appeared out of nowhere into people's DVD collections. Because I don't even remember.
I have two copies over there somehow.
I think I got like a copy came when I bought my house. Like it came with a copy of
the Matrix.
If I had a pair of Morpheus sunglasses, I would put them on right now and say, "What if I told you every house came with a copy of the Matrix?"
See, but if that worked, then we'd all have an ET Atari somewhere in our house.
Yeah.
No, it's really
being in a landfill.
My apartment came with 100 hours of free AOL. So
nice.
Oh, I had free AOL for like 2 years. Every time you try to quit, they're like, try 6 months more for free. They would not let you give them up for the longest time. Every time you say like, okay, my 6 months is up, I'm cutting it off now. No,
that's the secret to never paying for Hulu.
How many times?
Every time you try to cancel Hulu, they're like 3 more months for free. Will you stay? I'm like, sure.
How many times have you bought Ghostbusters?
DVD, well, VHS, DVD, Blu-ray.
It's funny you ask because we rented it over and over as children, as I said, and then I had the DVD for the longest time, and then I just bought it again yesterday because you can't. You get to stream it, you either have to rent it or buy it. And I'm like, no, I'm just gonna buy it.
I love the Stay Puft cover on that DVD.
Yeah, it's very nice.
I had VHS, DVD, and I bought it on Amazon Prime. So 3.
I've got it. This one came with a digital download, so I haven't downloaded it yet, but I need to, because when I tried to watch the UHD one, it skipped during the Dana scene where the arms are ripping out of the chair, which is one of the most horrifying moments of any movie ever. It's like, wow, that's kind of intense for this movie that's been pretty lighthearted up till now.
Especially for a kid. That was one of the moments that scared me as a kid.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh my God, I used to be so happy that our kitchen didn't have a door. It's like every time I just walk in the room and the light is on in the kitchen and I'm the only one there, I'm like, how did that happen?
That was an effect that got used a lot in the 80s too. Like I figure like they just figured that out with like the light and the door slamming.
Well, and the little plasticky, the shape coming out of the door effect. Because they did that the same year for Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's something that 1984 was a great year for movies, was what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gremlins came out the same day.
Don't you talk about it.
Don't Zach, whatever his name is, that no. He stole my candy bars.
He stole your Cliff bars, didn't he?
What?
My kind bars, yeah.
Your kind bars, I apologize. Which are far more expensive than Cliff bars.
He is now a mortal enemy. He is my
Best hope he doesn't come back to Pensacon.
Oh, let him come back to Pensacon. You owe me $20 worth of kind bars, sir.
Just walk up to him.
Hey, I'll take a free photo.
I was about to say, I'll sign something for you. That's about
that's a good compromise. So let's talk about Ghostbusters 2016. I remember this movie came out, and I did not see it until as of this recording today. I never saw it in theaters because my thing was like I had nothing against them essentially rebooting the franchise or having an all-female cast. It didn't really appeal to me, I guess. Mm-hmm. But in watching it, I didn't think it was all that bad.
No, it's a fun movie. Right. It's not the same kind of movie, and I'm actually...
But it didn't need to be.
I'm glad it was not in the same universe, because I would have been upset had they tried it in the same universe with different people and the whole different concepts. Like, I'm glad that they did it outside of the universe. Right. And it's actually something that we're going to do on my show later on. It's slated because people crap on it way too easily.
They really do. And I think a lot of people, their expectations were either incredibly high or it was really, really low. And there was no in between. And I think that's a huge problem, because for the people who had it really, really high, it's like, what movie? I mean, even Afterlife, which is, everybody's really high on this movie right now, it's not going to be as good as the first Ghostbusters. I mean, there's no way any movie is going
maybe to be for better. New kids, but for people our age that watch the first, right? We are going to be
girl's probably going to love it to death, but but she loves the first two movies though, and the 2016, she loves all of them. And which is amazing, because she told me whenever I get a full-size pack, she wants my spirit pack, which is wonderful news. But the thing that I think people didn't do is kind of adjust their expectations based on what they were doing, because they didn't do the same thing as the original Ghostbusters. This was a comedy that knew it was a comedy. I mean, I don't know if there's any other way of really saying it.
I think you're right, because it wasn't a drama comedy blend like the original Ghostbusters were. It was just straight up. It was straight up funny.
It was a straight up comedy. I mean, the moment the first joke happened, it's like, oh, that's the tone they're going.
And that was really my only problem with the movie. I mean, I think it's a good movie, but as far as it feels like a modern comedy. And I'm not a huge fan of modern comedies. Like, they just don't have that. They don't. I don't know. They just don't. I don't know. There's a certain. I can't even explain it. It's just. It doesn't feel like. I don't know.
It just doesn't appeal to you.
There's a realism that's lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you go too far one way, and the movie's not funny, it's just, it becomes a Wes Anderson film.
It's almost like
if you go too far the other way,
it's almost like slapstick. It was just kind of like way too.
It's just before parody at this point.
Yeah, it's like joke, and there's no just like,
it doesn't give you time to really
Yeah,
get the characters or
exactly. Like, I
or
didn't
the,
give a
you
shit
know,
about anybody in the
no,
movie.
I really didn't. Honestly, the only character I really liked was Kate McKinnon's character.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was good.
Because
Yeah.
she had a character. The other ones were just being loud and
It's kind of like the comedy version of what I call a guy flick, just guns and explosions and
right. I mean,
yeah, it's that, but with comedy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean,
You don't expect substance. You don't expect, because it's just, I want to watch stuff blow up, or I just want to laugh.
Right. I mean, because like with this, they do things that the other Ghostbusters didn't do that I don't think they would have gotten away with in the original Ghostbusters, which is fine because they're going for something entirely different in this particular instance. But there are things that work in the movie, and the things that work in the movie are very nice to see. Like, I liked the new jumpsuits. The tech was really cool looking.
Yeah.
There was some things I didn't like about that, but the ghosts looked way too slick to me.
That was a lot. Yeah. It feels like a slick comedy.
Right.
And it just doesn't.
You can see the money on
resonate.
screen, and I don't want like that. It just, things happen randomly that don't make much sense. Like, and the whole
my kind of comedy, like we talked about before, like my favorite kind of comedies are where the comedy comes from the situation and like the absurdity of a situation and the reactions to that situation.
Right. And
but when it's just like, it's just joke after joke after joke. And like, yeah, I thought, Chris Hemsworth was supremely funny in that movie.
Right.
And everybody else in that movie is a funny person, like, and funny actor, but it's just that there was no kind of comedy that just felt natural. It just felt like we're going to shove as many jokes in here as we can in this scene. You're either going to laugh or not.
I think a big problem with it was that they weren't either going far enough or they were going too far. They had an inconsistent tone. And
yes.
But and the reason why I feel this way is because the stuff that really works is in the middle. And and whenever, like, Chris Hemsworth's character was really funny, but at the same time, pointless.
Yes.
There was very little that he did in that film that made any damn sense. And honestly, a lot of the movie doesn't make sense. Like, the whole crux of her getting fired because of the ghost thing. Like, they have the YouTube video that was uploaded of her saying, "Oh my God, I saw a ghost." The thing that bothers me the most about that whole conceit is the fact that she's getting fired over this video that was uploaded, but they didn't upload the actual ghost. Is that what I'm to believe? Is that they only showed her freaking out over a ghost, which allows them to what is happening here?
That's the thing. You remember way more about this movie than I do. I saw it once in the theater and then as soon as it was almost like as soon as I left the theater, that entire movie just fell out of my brain. Like nothing stuck.
Oh, I remember the whole thing. But then again, it's a Ghostbusters movie. I was going to
say, you're talking about the guy who's just like a little bit of uranium away from making his own proton pack.
Right.
He just needs the nuclear material. And
I mean,
it's going to happen one day.
It has a damn My Little Pony Ghostbuster. I know everything there is to know.
That is dedication, my friends.
About Ghostbusters. But it's one of those things where it could have been better, but I really enjoyed what it was. I'm not mad that it exists. I love the people involved. Some people say
I think that's my biggest disappointment in it is because everybody that is in the movie, and even Kevin Feige, who made the movie, Kevin Feige or not?
No, that's Marvel.
Who am I thinking? What's his name?
You're talking about. Oh my God! Now it's out of my head because you said it wrong.
But you know who I'm talking about. Like they're all really good actors and director, and it just it fell so flat. Like you had so
Peter
much
Feig
talent.
is what we were
Peter
talking-
Feig, yeah.
Peter Feig.
And it felt like that should have been so much better than it was. It just felt lazy to me.
When you're talking about a workplace comedy, which is basically what Ghostbusters is, and you're going to tell me that someone who has written and directed a third of the best episodes of The Office, and then it turns into that movie, yes, I'm very disappointed in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still liked it.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's not garbage.
It didn't destroy theater, the theater experience for 10 years like people act like
No.
oh my God, I can't.
Like they do
watch
with
this
Star
movie, it's so
Wars.
horrible.
I'm not going to burn my Funko Pops over there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, 'cause that was
Go
my
ahead.
biggest problem with it is when I left the theater, I was like, well, that wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be.
I also read
Yeah.
the novel, which is probably why I remember a lot of the plot too.
Probably.
I mean, I went in with really no expectations, which is what I try to do with movies nowadays anyway. I agree with you, Wally. Like there are moments with all the characters that I enjoy. I enjoyed, even though his character was pointless, I enjoyed Chris Hemsworth the most because I thought he had some really funny moments. But at the same time, I felt like, was this really necessary to be made?
It's really the more human moments that are the best moments. Like when Holtzman is talking to the officials, and they're like, "Do you know how many laws you're breaking with that vehicle?" And she's like, "Is it 5? Is it, and it's just like,
Yeah.
tell me it's like 10, right? Stuff like that's very funny, character driven, something that somebody might actually do in that situation. When Patty is walking down the hallway and there's all those mannequins and she's like, "Oh, you better not start moving." And then it starts chasing her. "I told you not to start moving." Funny stuff. But all the stuff where they're overacting, all the stuff that's just out there. I mean, I get it. I know what you were trying to do. It just was not right for this property.
I did enjoy the cameos from Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson when they kept bringing up Patty's uncle about him owning the hearse, and he was brought up towards the end of the movie, and I'm thinking, okay, we've seen Bill Murray, we've seen Dan Aykroyd. I bet her uncle is Ernie Hudson, and sure enough, at the end of the movie, this hearse shows, and I'm like, it's going to be Ernie Hudson. Sure enough, it was Ernie Hudson. I'm like, yeah.
It's like, Ernie Hudson is probably the best resource of Ghostbusters fandom in the world because he loves the fact he was in this movie. He loves it.
I'm trying to get him on my new show for January. So hopefully,
I mean, it would be great. Our friend Danny House took a whole bunch of pictures with him. She's a photographer. She was at a convention and she actually took some photos for him and said that he was really nice. So
that's what I've heard too.
Yeah, everybody I know that's talked to him thinks he's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
Heck, I know some guys in the Ghostbusters community that had dinner with him, and it's like, and he was in full, like he was in the jumpsuit and everything, and I'm like,
that's awesome.
You had dinner with Ernie Hudson in a Ghostbusters? Oh my
Dressed
God.
as Winston? Like, yeah, oh my God.
As Winston? What is going on? He actually auditioned for the role of Winston for the Real Ghostbusters and lost it to Arsenio Hall.
Because that totally makes sense.
100%. I mean, Arsenio Hall, he was just...
Nothing against Arsenio Hall, but...
So I guess...
To be fair, Arsenio really needed the money at that point. So...
Well,
I can just imagine them looking at Ernie Hudson and be like, "Hey, you're just not Winston enough, Like,
what do you mean? If there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say.
Well, as we start to wrap up here, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, when this episode is released, it will be the day of the release of Ghostbusters Afterlife. We've been waiting for over a year. The pandemic's pushed this movie back. We're finally getting it. Wally, we'll start with you. What are your expectations for this movie? And what do you hope to see?
Honestly, I think I've seen most of the movie, because if you've been following the marketing of this film, they keep showing scenes. So, in fact, they did a trailer today that's a minute long. And there was a moment that I kind of wish wasn't in it, but I'm glad it was, if that makes sense. I don't know. Have y'all seen it?
Yeah, I've seen all the little things they've been putting out.
Would you mind if I told you what's in this trailer?
You can tell me what's in the trailer.
Yeah, go ahead.
There is a shot at the end of it where you hear Venkman say, "Hey," and then it cuts to like a mid shot of the three of them turning on. You can't see their faces; you just see them turning on the neutrino wands. It's like, "Did you miss us?" And then Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I'm like, okay, I filled the cup. And that is how I feel like I'm going to be at the movie. I'm gonna see it opening day. Hopefully, I haven't bought my tickets yet because I've been trying to negotiate, with everybody else in my family. And but I'm going to see it the day it comes out, and I'm super excited. I've got the poster on my wall already. I have pre-ordered the Proton Pack that's being released. That's full size. I'm all in. I'm excited for this movie, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be my second favorite Ghostbusters movie.
Jason?
Well, I'm trying to temper my expectations, but as far as what I want out of the movie, what I want is I know it's never going to be as good as the original Ghostbusters, but I want it to be good enough to spawn not only like a new generation of Ghostbusters things, but I also want it to be a nice tight bow on the original Ghostbusters. Like this would be the Ghostbusters 3 where you wrap up that story of, who was that?
It's a ghost.
It's a ghost.
It was Slimer.
I want a nice, send off for, for Egon, and Harold Ramis, he's no longer with us. Like, I just want it to be a nice wrap up for those original Ghostbusters and move us into new Ghostbusters territory.
Mike?
Kind of a blend of the two that I've already said. I would love for this, like Jason said, to be like the Star Trek Generations that didn't suck.
Yeah.
The bridging an old generation with a new generation. And I'm totally psyched that all three of them are in, and seems like in a real way, not just like a quick cameo, but actually in it. And I would love to see them together again. I would love to see with Harold Ramis again, but sadly.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a nice tribute to him. I think the whole film is going to be a nice tribute to Harold Ramis, and I
do like that they made it his family, and I think that's part of.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I'm hoping that I'm with you guys. I don't expect it to be as good as the original because I think that's just impossible. But I think it can be the best Ghostbusters movie outside of that. And like Jason was saying, I'll be curious to see if this is kind of a passing of the torch and the Ghostbusters franchise will continue after this film. Like I could see this being maybe a nice send off for the original cast to wrap up their story that began in Ghostbusters 1, because we've waited a long time for this to happen. So I'm expecting it to be a very good movie. I'm trying not to think, okay, well, this is just going to be like movie of the year or, of my lifetime or anything like that. But
knowing that it's Jason Reitman doing it, this was, his father's movie, and he's not going to want to.
Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, he's not going to want to screw this up,
Yeah. And I also think that Murray Ackroyd and Ernie Hudson, I don't think they would be back if the movie sucked.
Yeah.
Right.
Or if they thought it sucked. So. And
there's a character named Podcast, so I am a little partial to the film.
That's fair. That's very fair. Well, to close us out, Mike, we'll start with you. Where can people find you on social media and tell them about B-Res Coffee and your show?
Oh, that's gonna be another half an hour to go all that. So on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Jester8082. That's also where you'll find the show, The Jester's Court, where we fight back against people who, unfairly crap on properties, movies, and video games. We just did our episode with Superman Returns last night.
Nice.
And coming up actually next Sunday, me and Jason are going to be talking about Where's Mike Myers, Halloween 3.
Any chance I get to defend that movie, I'm there. I'm there with the Halloween 3 flag, flying it proudly.
And
you got to find one of the masks to wear on the show.
Yeah.
And just to plug B-Res, if you like freshly roasted coffee and not stuff that's been sitting on a shelf for 4 weeks before you buy it, brescoffeeco.com.
Jason?
You can find me at JFunktastic pretty much everywhere. Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and go listen to me and Derek talk about retro games. And we do commentary tracks every single month. The last commentary track we did was Clue, wasn't it? For Nerd Cave Retro show at Nerd Cave Retro, Instagram, Twitter, nerdcaveretro.com. And you can download the show pretty much anywhere, Spotify, Anchor, all those places. Go listen to our show over there. And I also do a show with another comedian, Jacob Craig, called Open Micers, where we talk to all sorts of people in the, not just comedians, but everybody in the trenches of the entertainment industry. We've talked to all kind of cool people over there, like Stephen Perkins, the drummer from Jane's Addiction. We've talked to Brian O'Halloran, all kind of cool people over there at Open Micers on Twitter and Instagram, and ompodcast.com.
And last but not least, Mr. Wally Phelps.
You can find me at the Starbucks on Highway 90. At the Real Big Wall on Twitter. You can find me at the Real Big Wall on Instagram, YouTube, where you'll see a whole bunch of highlight videos of me playing Fortnite with my buddy Steffi Luhu and I Am the Rampage. There is a show called Kumasan that me and Jason are a part of, that you can listen to. It is a fantasy narrative podcast where we play multiple different roles. I seem to be the one of the main characters, and I didn't realize it when I signed up. And I am a fan favorite too. It's amazing. And,
it's great now that we're
voice actor, but you're not Chris Pratt.
No, yeah. I am not Chris Pratt, which,
I didn't think that was possible. Are you sure?
Well, the thing is, I am voiced by Chris Pratt, so it works out.
It's great because thank God we started getting some other voice actors on the podcast, because like the first couple episodes, it's like 90% me doing all the voices.
Yeah. And honestly, I was listening to one of the episodes the other day because I listened to it on the first pass before they put the other actors in there. But then I listened to the edited version where he put the new people in there. And I'm still in there twice. And I realized my characters talk back to back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh God, am I going to sound the same? And no, I don't. And I'm like, oh, thank God I'm a better actor than I thought I was. But yeah, I mean, I was doing an impression of a general, like just a normal general, and then I did an impression of Remy LeBeau. So it was pretty cool. So yeah, find me Kumasan. That's the name of the show, and I think that's everything. If it's not everything, just again, Starbucks Highway 90. You can just drop by and I'll tell you.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and talk Ghostbusters. This was great.
Thank you, good sir.
Yes,
thank you.
Thanks again to Jason, Wally, and Mike for that awesome discussion on the Ghostbusters franchise. Hopefully you all enjoy Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'm seeing it today on opening day, and I'll be giving my thoughts on it and discussing several other things on this Monday's live finale, which will be at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook at facebook.com/DDiamondPodcast. As I mentioned It is the final episode of the Derek Diamond Experience. I'll be discussing, some of my favorite moments of the show. Feel free to drop in. I'll also be doing my top 5 movie endings, which I think is a very fitting top 5 to end the show with. I've got a thread up on Facebook now, so if you want to leave your list or if you want to leave them in the live chat, do that as well, and I'll read them on the show. So be sure to stop by 6 p.m. Monday, November 22nd at facebook.com/DDiamondPodcast. If you want to follow me on other forms of social media, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at DDiamondPodcast. If you want to subscribe to the show, I'm on all major podcasting platforms. Just search for The Derek Diamond Experience. I'm on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Anywhere you get your podcast for free, you can find it. The shows are also on YouTube. If you prefer the video versions, just search for Derek Diamond, and you'll find those. If you want to check out my Patreon, I'm at patreon.com/DDiamondPodcast. And of course, thank you to the Unicorn Wranglers for providing the theme music for the podcast. You can check out all their music on Apple Music, Google Play, and Spotify. That's going to do it for this week's show, so enjoy the rest of your week. Have a safe and fun weekend. Enjoy Ghostbusters Afterlife, and we'll see you back here this Monday for the final episode of the Derek Diamond Experience podcast.